just a part 3 of just just you updating me on where things are going. And maybe we'll just do like this series. I don't know, once a month or something if you want.
Cool.
Just,
Yeah, that's perfect. And that was just, I wanted to get it before there was like another update, just because I think this is perfect, because given and like I can talk a little bit more about it in a second, but like basically now it's a waiting game for the next step. There's like some big developments that happened in the first week of February, and now it's like what's next. So yeah, I can talk about that, and then whenever that next update is, then we can chat again then.
Are there regular updates, or is it just kind of whenever something gets done?
So that's one thing that I mean, I can talk to you about, I've talked to my friends about. I don't really understand the schedule of Congress or the schedule of the Senate, like when. So for example, I think we'll get right into it, I guess.
Well, let me go. We can start. Let me just kind of do the intro real quick, and then
okay, cool.
And then we can start, and I'll just kind of intro you as, I'll probably slaughter your name again, which is crazy because I know how to pronounce Spanish, but you're 28 now, right?
28 now. It's
right.
getting old.
Dude, you're almost freaking down. It's all slippery slope downhill at 30.
Oh, I know.
So, all right, ladies and gentlemen, and whoever else is listening, welcome back to the program. Today with me again for the third time is Carlo Barerra. He is a DACA recipient and is from Mexico originally. He's now 28 years old, been here for 21 years. Correct, yep. Carlo?
Correct.
Welcome again. Welcome back. And we wanted to talk to you again we're going to do this multiple part series of just your updates on the whole DACA program and how that's unfolding since the election of President Biden. So welcome back, sir.
Thanks. I was about to call you Brian or Biden. Thanks. Thanks, Brian.
Well, I've been called worse. It's okay.
Thanks so much for having me. Appreciate it. Obviously, it's always great to catch up and give you some more updates on what's going on in the DACA world.
Cool. So tell me, there was some developments you said recently. So what's happening? What's next? What does that mean for you and others like you?
So the first thing that happened was on Biden's first day, he signed like a bunch of executive orders. I'm sure everyone it was pretty all over the news how hard Biden and his administration went on executive orders. And it was funny because like his press secretary was asked, like, because Biden was criticized the Trump administration for basically ruling and commanding via executive orders. And Biden's defense to that was saying all the executive orders that he signed on day one and continues to sign are just to basically undo bad policy that he considers bad policy from the Trump administration. So his defense is once he gets basically back on track, then he'll start working with Congress and the Senate to actually pass legislation as opposed to just signing executive orders. But anyway, so on day one, he signed an executive order protecting DACA and basically restoring DACA back to the 2012 days when the Obama administration founded it. So basically, it got rid of all that uncertainty that the DACA community, DACA recipients like myself had been feeling for the last 4 years, where, like I've mentioned before on your show that the Trump administration from the start of their first year were attacking DACA. They were trying to end DACA and they were almost successful, but then they just kept getting held up in courts. And finally, the Supreme Court ruled in DACA's favor, but then there was back and forth. And so anyway, long story short, the Biden administration signed an executive order restoring DACA. So now DACA recipients like me, we have all the benefits that we had back in 2012. So for example, now I could, myself, anyone else that's a DACA recipient can officially apply for an advanced parole document, which is a travel document that allows you to leave and come back into the United States if it falls under certain categories, which is humanitarian, educational, and employment opportunities. So right now I have the opportunity to potentially go back to Mexico and visit my sick grandpa if I applied now. And I'll get more into that in a second, but and then I could also, if I have to travel for work, finally, like my employer can write me a letter saying that I have to travel for work. I have to pay an application fee, wait a couple of months, and then I have a permit that allows me to travel back and forth. So all those things I wasn't able to do the last 4 years. So that's definitely a huge relief and something that Biden and his campaign definitely followed through on. That was a big promise during their entire campaign, was that they would restore DACA and they'd protect dreamers. And so now it's up to Congress and the Senate to pass permanent legislation, which I can get to in a second.
So then, and maybe you're answering this in the next question, but so to apply for that permit, that travel permit, how long does that process take?
Yeah, so that's where I'm kind of like in a weird zone right now personally, because my current work permit expires in April 21st or 19th of this year. So in a few months, my work permit will expire, and that's the DACA, the work permit under DACA, which renews. You have to renew every 2 years. So my 2 years are up, and now I could apply. I could have applied, from the day basically that Biden took office. But I'm kind of waiting to see. I'm in a weird little I don't know, this weird middle ground where I'm not sure what the best step is in terms of like both logistically and financially, because I could apply again, like I said yesterday, to renew my work permit. That's a $600 fee. And then that usually takes about at least 2 months. So by the time I would hear back, that's when so ideally I would apply now to renew my work permit. However, and if I wanted to apply for an advanced parole permit, that usually takes as well, like 1 to 2 months. So by the time I would get approved, my work permit. So I would basically have to do both coinciding. So apply to renew my work permit, and then once that's approved in like a month or two, then apply for a travel permit. And so I'm in this weird conundrum where I don't know really what to do, whether I should apply and not really count on anything to pass, like in terms of like permanent legislation, and apply now and buy myself 2 more years, or wait for a week, a couple weeks, a month, whatever, to see if permanent legislation will pass through Congress and the Senate.
So are there, like, I'm sure you've done this enough, kind of know the ropes and how to do it yourself, but is there like legal counsel or people that help with this process? So, because anything with government is a nightmare, as you know, they are the epitome of, nothing being done.
Yeah.
And they don't care because there's no competition. So how do you navigate all that?
That's a great question. And I think it's one that goes overlooked, because these forms actually have them right here. They're long, they're like, here, I can actually grab them really quickly.
Yeah.
But this is like 2 applications, like for my work permit, to renew my work permit, and to get apply for a travel permit. So, and it's, all, like you said, government forms. So they're complicated.
They could be done
they
could be done in like half a sheet and it would be fine.
Exactly.
They got to justify somebody's job pushing papers somewhere.
Yeah. So I got very lucky, and my dad kind of I think he found someone when back in 2012 when this first passed, to help us fill out the application. And I've had to renew every 2 years since 2012. So it's been 3-4 times. So this will be my 4th time now that I've had to apply to renew. So now this is like doing homework. Now it's like it's easy for me, thankfully, and I got very lucky that I had someone like my dad teach me the ropes essentially. But there's people out there that don't have that education, or don't have those resources that I got lucky enough to have. So there are organizations, there are nonprofits, there is free legal counsel, and there's organizations, groups, there's even support groups on Facebook, everywhere now, where you can kind of ask for help. You can go somewhere physically. Obviously right now with the pandemic, it's a little different, but there's clinics, there's workshops, everything for people who maybe it's their first time applying or renewing, and they go in and they get all that. They kind of get walked through from page 1 to page X to make sure that they're not missing anything. Because what ends up happening, and it happened to me once, is that if you fill out a form or a section incorrectly, or you forget to send the correct attachment or the correct proof of evidence or anything like that, your application can get denied, and then those $500-$600 are down the drain.
So that's almost that's part of the game. Unfortunately, I think that's part of the game with these bureaucracies, is they make it difficult. I don't know, that's just my perception. It could be wrong, but
I agree.
That's crazy.
So yeah, so that's what I got very lucky that I'm able to kind of navigate through these complicated forms by myself and independently. But there are definitely people who don't have that luxury, and thankfully there's some great organizations that help them out.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So then that happens, and you have that pass, and then let's say you submit all your paperwork. How long does that take to get that back to know if you got it? And then how long does it last?
So okay, so exactly good. Another good question. So basically, let's say I apply, I fill out all these forms out and apply tomorrow. Let's see, it's February 9th. If I would probably get back my renewed work permit by the end of April. So actually, that like right around when my current work permit expires. Once I get that back, then I could send in my application for the travel permit, and then that would take another 2 months. So basically, at the end of the day, I could potentially have my renewed work permit and travel permit by probably June. So again, it's just like it's such a slow moving process, and during that time, like that waiting, as soon as I send that, as soon as the application leaves my hands, and like I guess even before now that I haven't applied yet, but like I can't plan anything. I can't plan a month ahead, 2 months ahead. I can't plan. Thankfully, I have that peace of mind where I know that I will be able to. I have the option to renew my work permit. So unlike the last administration, to me, April 21st, 19th, whatever day my work permit expires, that was like the expiration date of like my life here, essentially. Not to be dramatic, but like
Yeah.
now, thankfully, I know that's kind of like my end date, my expiration date, but I know that I can renew it. So like, but up until then, I can't really plan past April, and I can't say, my grandpa got really sick tomorrow. I can't really plan on going to see him because I just don't know how long that process would take to get my permit back.
Got it.
So
That's crazy.
yeah, it's not fun.
Well, so, and I never asked you this before, and I hope this doesn't come across as me prying for something that isn't there, but 21 years, what's held you up from getting like citizenship or getting these things before that time? And I didn't ever ask you that before, but
Yeah,
how?
no, that's a good question. That's again,
Curious.
excellent question. Just because there's there are so many misconceptions around that exact topic, and like everyone will, I mean, not everyone, but a majority of
Yeah.
Americans, especially Americans that maybe aren't the biggest fans of DACA recipients or dreamers, they'll ask us like, well, like you've been here for
They
21
don't know
years.
one. They don't know one like I do.
Yeah, exactly. But they'll ask them, they'll ask us like, oh, you've been here for what, 21 years? Like why not just get citizenship? And our answer is pretty simple. It's like if we could have, we would have, right? So like if we had the opportunity by any means, by any legal means or any sort of I don't know, proper means, we would have done it already. But for now, since for DACA recipients, you essentially, in order to be a DACA recipient, you had to come to the country illegally, essentially, right? So we came here as children. I came here as a 6-year-old. Thankfully, came here legally through a tourist visa. But then, as soon as our tourist visa expired, then me and my family and I were here illegally, right? So because of that, we don't qualify for a lot of the immigration benefits that other immigrants can apply for. So certain visas we can apply for because we overstayed a tourist visa. So there aren't many resources for DACA recipients. There's actually only like marriage, which some people go and marry their best friend and then and then they get divorced, whatever. So, but that's not something I want to do. And then the other one is just permanent legislation. So we can't even really get sponsored. And the only other option is, and again, for my specific scenario, like I wouldn't feel right
Doing it
kind
wrong.
of do exactly, because my and the other sort of recourse we have is to apply for asylum here. So essentially saying that I don't feel safe enough I would like fear for my life going back to Mexico, and like where I'm from, it's a beautiful little town, beautiful little state north of Mexico State, Mexico City. So
So you
like
couldn't justify that.
exactly. And like if I
Honestly.
was not a terrible person, but if I had kind of no other option, I could lie and say, and a lot of people do this, and like I don't blame them for it, but I could say I do fear for my life to go back to Mexico, like whatever, gangs, anything like that. I can kind of fabricate a story, but I'm not going to do that. And then again, the only other two options are marriage, which I'm not there yet, and then the third one is just waiting for permanent legislation. So we don't have any option. Like that's why it's been so frustrating, because people are like, well, you've been here for 21 years, why not like become a citizen? It's like, because we've been waiting for 21 years to have the opportunity, and we haven't been presented that opportunity.
I wonder, it sounds like you and many others like you would be phenomenal employees with the government trying to make this happen for other people, because
Yeah,
they should hire you.
Oh, thank
You would
you.
make crap happen. And I don't know. That's just, maybe that's
I know.
something.
I think. I mean, no. To be honest, I
Can
think
you
that's what
apply
happened.
for a job with the immigration department that you can, hey, we'll bust this. We'll work 24 hours a day and we'll get this done. We'll get these people, I don't know. Maybe that's just
No,
guy.
it's funny you say that because I think the last 4 years have definitely opened my eyes to like how involved I can get in politics and how involved I can get into like that political process. Like to be perfectly honest, like basically up until DACA passed, like my only real, like the only time I really cared about like any like developments in the government or whatever current administration was in office, like it was just if it had to do with DACA, if it had to do with immigration, like. But now I think the last 4 years have really opened my eyes to seeing how like every sort of marginalized group is affected both positively and negatively by the actions of the administration in power. So it's definitely something that I continue to, and that's what like I've been since I got into photography during quarantine. Like I'm trying to document I use that to document some sort of like people's stories and how that impact like the political system impacts their lives and stuff like that. So it's definitely something I'm passionate about and have gained that passion in the last 4 years.
Well, I think you and I talked about it when we first spoke before the election, is that and it's whether we neglect or just don't know because we're not involved, but we don't really pay attention to something if it doesn't affect us personally. It's hard to
Yeah,
get
exactly.
your head around it or be connected to it when it's like, oh, that's those people over there in that group, in that camp. I don't know them, so I'm not going to get involved.
Yeah,
So
exactly. And
that's
I think that's why it's so
honestly, I
cool.
would not have been doing this had I not known you. I probably would have just been like, okay, whatever. I'm not going to really pay attention because it doesn't affect me, which is
No, exactly.
easy to do. So I'm glad I know you because at least, like say we talked about earlier, it puts a face on these policies that people are just like, well, that's for those people,
hmm
put them over there.
No,
And
exactly. And I think that's why it's so cool what you're doing because you are getting insight from different groups and in different perspectives. And I think that's so important with especially in like the political climate we're at now where
what are
no
you talking
one's
about?
no one's really looking to do that.
What political climate?
Yeah, right.
We're all happy and getting along. It's all good.
Exactly. But yeah, and I guess like so then the other big development was on February 4th. Senator Durbin and Senator Lindsey Graham, who's obviously a big Republican,
Mhm.
both co-sponsored the DREAM Act, which was first introduced in 2001. Yeah, 2001, so 20 years ago. So I can like again, so it's back to your initial point, like this DREAM Act, which would grant citizenship, which would grant us residency like immediately, and then would grant us citizenship down the line for dreamers and people who, yeah, basically if you qualify for DACA, you would qualify for the DREAM Act, which is basically a pathway to citizenship for DACA recipients and dreamers. So yeah, that was introduced back in 2001, and so since 2001, basically the U.S. government has kind of gotten our hopes up. They're like, all right, like we're trying to come up with a package here to help dreamers and DACA recipients out. Well, DACA didn't exist back then, but dreamers out and immigrants who were brought here as kids, they're just as American as their American neighbor,
Yeah,
basically, right?
yeah,
So
totally.
let's
I
help
mean,
them out.
you do more
So
for this country than a lot of people I know.
thank
No.
you. So yeah, so like that's been on the floor of the House or the Senate, which it's been going back and forth, but since 2001, and so it was just reintroduced on February, the same exact DREAM Act, and so again, we're just waiting, basically on Congress. So that's where kind of there's a disconnect between like, so that was the latest development, right? On February 4th, it was introduced. So now what I don't know, and I've been like trying to research it, and I like probably someone who's more involved in politics and knows kind of like how the logistical process works, knows like when the House like can vote on it, and then when like the House votes, which thankfully the House is Democrat controlled, so it'll pass the House and then go to the Senate. So I don't know what that timeline looks like. And that's why I've been kind of struggling with like what I should be doing in terms of like applying now or waiting and like kind of like writing out like this new recent like positive development to see if I should just wait and like apply. Or so that's been the latest development with DACA recipients.
If you apply at the wrong time, does that screw up your paperwork and we have to start over, or does that, if there's overlap,
No.
something like that?
So thankfully, so like I think that's why, definitely by the end of the month, I'll probably end up, if nothing drastic changes, like I think I will end up applying to renew my work permit, just because there's nothing I can really lose by applying. I mean, besides money, there's nothing I can lose by applying. So if, let's say I apply at the end of the month and it takes about a month or two to get that permit back, if something passes in terms of like Senate or Congress that goes into permanent legislation, then like it wouldn't negatively affect me. I would just have to reapply like through whatever process and procedures they put in place through that Dream Act. But yeah, no, like thankfully there's no kind of negative side of applying now. So
Okay.
I think that's why. I mean, it's just, again, and like I've been lucky, and thankfully my current job said they'll help me kind of finance those fees. So like I'm one of the very lucky few who has an employer who's willing to help me out financially, or who doesn't have to hire a lawyer to fill out these forms, because thankfully, like I said, I've done it so many times that now like I know how to get the stuff done. So yeah, it's kind of I got very lucky. There's people that, like, let's say someone who's in my conundrum doesn't have, an employer that will sort of quote unquote sponsor them and pay for their fee. Like if they pay the $600 now, and then the Dream Act passes, but then there's like an $800 fee and they can't afford that, then what do they do? So it's like, and this is all on top of it being in the middle of a global pandemic where people are already struggling to make ends meet. So it's a weird little time that we're in right now.
Unfortunately, it's government, and this pandemic just added to the already inefficiency of it.
Yeah.
So when you submit your applications, does it go to like a local office, or does it go to DC?
Yeah, so good question. They have a bunch of different, not a bunch, I think they have 2 or 3 USCIS, United States Customs and Immigration Services. I think that's what it stands for. They have a couple centers. The one I send it to, being on the West Coast, is in Nebraska. So I send it to,
Nebraska's not very West Coast-ish, is it?
I know, right? So it's, but I think
the West Coast, you have to send it to the middle.
Yeah, exactly. And I think when I used to apply in New York, I sent it to there was one in Chicago. So I think Chicago's the East Coast, and then Nebraska's the West Coast.
Yeah, you'd think it would be like Nevada or something because it's the West Coast, but whatever. Again, government inefficiency, but
exactly.
Okay.
But yeah, so that's where we're at, and that's why I think this is perfect that we had this little catch up and this little update now, because hopefully, knock on wood, within the next 2-3 weeks, some new development happens in terms of the Dream Act. So that'd be huge.
Well, yeah. Well, let's schedule, or just wait. When something happens, we'll do this again. Is there anything I didn't ask you this time that you wanted to share with people, or
no? I think all
or any
Nope. All your questions were perfect, and I think that's covered everything.
Well, okay, that was easy.
Easy.
Okay, man. Well, let's we'll be standing by, and then if there's anything in the meantime that we can do, or anybody can do, or I can do, or let us know, let me know, and we'll at least put it out there and see if that helps the process. But anyway, so yeah, thank you so much for your time again.
Awesome.
And
thanks, Brian. I appreciate it.
Okay.
Awesome. Sounds good.
Okay.
All right. Have a good night.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Brian. Bye.
Okay, I stopped recording. Oh, you went away.